Can you imagine having full control over your dreams? In some cultures, the night is not a time to drift aimlessly through sleep. It is a time to travel, to meet spirits, to seek answers. They believe dreams can be shaped, guided, even mastered. For these people, the dream world is not a shadow of reality. It is another reality just as vivid, just as alive. This is the story of those who walk between two worlds, where every dream is a choice, and every night holds the power to change everything. The Senoi, Malaysian Peninsula. Deep in the rainforests of Malaysia, where morning mist clings to ancient trees, like the breath of sleeping spirits, the Senoi people have spent centuries perfecting an art that most of us stumble through blindly: the art of conscious dreaming. Picture this. As dawn breaks over the jungle canopy, an entire village gathers not to discuss the weather or plan the day's work, but to share their dreams. Children as young as 5 years old stand before their elders, recounting visions with the seriousness of diplomats delivering state secrets. Because here, dreams are not mere fantasies, they are instructions from the universe itself. The Senoi believe that within the landscape of sleep lies the power to heal trauma, resolve conflict, and guide behavior. Their morning assemblies become theaters of the soul, where nightmares are transformed into conquests and fearful dream figures become allies. A child who dreams of falling learns to fly. A dreamer who encounters hostility learns to face it with courage. What the Senoi discovered thousands of years ago, modern psychologists are only now beginning to understand. That consciousness can be trained, that fear can be transformed, and that the dreaming mind holds keys to harmony that the waking world often loses. In these forest clearings, where ancient voices rise with the morning sun, we glimpse a truth that civilization forgot: that dreams are not disruptions of reality, but invitations to a deeper one. Madre de Dios, Bazin, Bolivia. Along the serpentine rivers of the Amazon, where the boundary between earth and water shifts like a living thing, the East Asia people understand that reality itself is fluid. Here, in the heart of the world's green lung, dreams don't simply reflect life, they shape it. When an East Asia child is born, they arrive into the world nameless, waiting. Not for parents or elders to choose their identity, but for the dream realm to reveal it. In the practice called Kiakojawi, the community enters a sacred waiting period, sleeping and dreaming, until animal guides appear in visions to whisper the child's true name. Imagine the profound trust this requires to believe that jaguars, dolphins, and rainbow-colored birds hold within their dream forms the essence of human identity. The East Asia don't see animals as separate from themselves, but as spiritual siblings speaking in the universal language of symbols and signs. In these dreams, a child might be visited by the spirit of a river dolphin, known for its intelligence and playfulness, earning the name that will guide their entire life's journey. Or perhaps a jaguar appears, fierce and protective, marking the child as one destined for leadership and strength. The practice reveals something breathtaking about indigenous wisdom: the understanding that identity is not imposed from without, but discovered from within in the deepest chambers of consciousness, where human and animal spirits dance together in eternal communion. The Iroquois, North America. In the woodlands surrounding the Great Lakes, where seasons paint the landscape in ever-changing tapestries of color, the Iroquois nations developed something unprecedented in human history: a democracy guided by dreams. As dawn breaks over ancient forests, Iroquois communities gather in sacred circles where dreams become policy, visions become law, and the sleeping wisdom of individuals transforms into the waking decisions of nations. This is not mysticism for its own sake, this is practical spirituality, where the subconscious insights of many combine to create conscious choices for all. Village elders understood what modern leadership often forgets, that the most important decisions require more than logic. They require the deeper wisdom that emerges only in the quiet spaces of sleep, where the soul speaks without the interference of ego or fear. Picture these dawn circles, where a hunter's dream of migrating deer herds informs the timing of seasonal movements, where a mother's vision of harsh winter guides the community's food storage, where a child's nightmare of conflict becomes the catalyst for peacekeeping efforts that prevent real warfare. The Iroquois transformed dreaming from individual experience into collective intelligence, creating a form of governance that honored both the wisdom of the community and the deeper wisdom that flows through it. In their sacred circles, democracy becomes not just a political system, but a spiritual practice. The Chipwan, Subarctic Canada. In the vast wilderness of subarctic Canada, where winter nights stretch like eternal meditations and the Aurora Borealis paints the sky in supernatural fire, the Chipewyan people learn to survive through dreams. Here, in landscapes that would challenge even the most prepared modern expedition, indigenous hunters developed techniques that turned sleep into a compass, dreams into maps. The Chipewyan understand something that our urbanized world has forgotten, that animals are not merely resources to be harvested, but spiritual beings with their own consciousness, their own wisdom, their own willingness to participate in the circle of life, if approached with proper respect. Before each hunting journey, Chipewyan hunters enter deep communion with the dream realm, waiting for animal guardians to appear in visions. These are not symbolic dreams, but practical instructions delivered through spiritual channels. A dream of caribou reveals not just location, but the animal's willingness to sustain the community. A vision of wolves teaches hunting protocol. A bear's appearance in sleep provides protective medicine for the dangerous journey ahead. These dream encounters create relationships that extend far beyond the physical act of hunting. They establish spiritual contracts between human and animal consciousness, ensuring that survival comes not through domination, but through cooperation, a dance of mutual respect that has sustained northern communities for millennia. In the Chipewyan understanding, every successful hunt begins not with weapons or tracking skills, but with dreams that bridge the gap between human need and animal spirit. Tibetan Baol, Himalayas, Bhutan. High in the Himalayas, where peaks pierce clouds like prayers made manifest, and valleys hide in mists that seem to breathe with ancient secrets, Tibetan masters speak of places that exist simultaneously in physical reality and spiritual dimension, the sacred refuges known as Baol. These hidden valleys, scattered throughout the world's highest mountain range, represent something extraordinary in human spiritual geography landscapes that can only be found through dreams, revealed only to those whose consciousness has been prepared through years of meditation and pure intention. The discovery of Baol requires more than maps or mountaineering skill. It demands dream visions received by spiritual masters, called tertans, who must decode sacred instructions hidden in symbolic language, navigate landscapes that shift between physical and ethereal dimensions, and prove their worthiness to guardians who appear as mist, snow, and the living presence of deities themselves. Imagine valleys where time moves differently, where healing springs flow with waters that cure both body and soul, where the normal laws of physics bend to accommodate the deeper laws of spiritual reality. These are not fantasies, but destinations, places where devoted practitioners can retreat during times of persecution or global upheaval, protected by natural barriers that remain invisible to those whose consciousness cannot perceive them. The Baal tradition reveals something profound about the relationship between inner and outer landscape. That the geography of enlightenment exists not just in meditation halls or sacred texts, but in actual places where the earth itself becomes teacher, where mountains and valleys participate in the human journey toward awakening. The Yaki, Sonoran Desert, Arizona. In the Sonoran Desert, where cacti stand like ancient sentinels, and the sun paints the landscape in shades of gold and crimson, the Yaki people understand reality as a vast web of interconnected worlds, 9 realms that overlap and interpenetrate, accessible through dreams, ceremony, and the ecstatic movement of ritual dance. The Yaki cosmos is not static, but dynamic, not separate but unified. The dream world flows into the night world, which merges with the sky world, which connects to realms of ancestors, spirits, and powers that most cultures can only imagine. These are not metaphors, but lived realities that inform daily decisions, seasonal celebrations, and the spiritual development of every community member. At the heart of this multidimensional understanding lies the deer dance, a ceremonial performance that becomes a bridge between worlds, where dancers embody the sacred deer that moves freely between the enchanted realm of nature spirits, the wilderness world of untamed power, and the dream world where all transformation begins. Watch as dancers move in the pre-dawn darkness, their bodies becoming vessels for deer spirits, their movements creating doorways through which the community can glimpse the sacred worlds that surround and sustain ordinary reality. This is not entertainment, this is spiritual technology, a practice that maintains the balance between human consciousness and the larger cosmic order. The Yaki remind us that reality is far more vast and interconnected than our daily experience suggests, that consciousness itself can travel between dimensions, and that through proper ceremony and dream practice, we can access wisdom that transcends the limitations of a single world. The Kogi, Sierra Nevada, Colombia. High in the Sierra Nevada mountains of Colombia, in peaks that rise from tropical coastlines to snow-covered summits, the Kogi people maintain a sacred responsibility that may be the most important work being done on Earth today, dreaming the world back into balance. The Kogi understand the planet not as a resource to be exploited, but as a living being whose health depends on the spiritual practices of humanity. Their spiritual leaders, known as mamos, spend their first 18 years in complete darkness, developing the inner vision necessary to perceive the web of energy that connects all life on Earth. These mamos emerge from their cave training with abilities that seem impossible to modern minds. They can sense ecological disturbances from hundreds of miles away, predict weather patterns through spiritual communion with natural forces, and most remarkably, perform healing work for the planet through dream practices that affect physical reality. In their understanding, every environmental crisis begins first in the spiritual realm, in the disconnection between human consciousness and the living intelligence of the Earth. Climate change, deforestation, species extinction. These are symptoms of spiritual illness that can only be healed through practices that restore the proper relationship between human dreaming and planetary consciousness. The mamos work in caves and mountain retreats, dreaming night after night to repair damage that industrial civilization inflicts during its waking hours. They understand their work as essential maintenance for life itself, spiritual technology that keeps the planet's energy systems functioning despite humanity's widespread forgetting of its sacred responsibilities. Through documentary films and rare interviews, the Kogi have begun sharing their warnings with the modern world, that the Earth is dying not just from physical pollution, but from the spiritual disconnection that makes such destruction possible. The Auarah, Amazon Basin, Peru. In the depths of the Amazon, where rivers wind like arteries through the green heart of the world, and every sunrise brings new possibilities for communion with spiritual forces, the Auarah people begin each day in a practice that transforms ordinary hunting into sacred ceremony. Before dawn, while the forest still breathes with the deep rhythms of night, Auarah hunters enter the liminal space between sleep and waking, drinking ayahuasca and waiting in profound stillness for visions that will guide their day's journey. This is not simply about finding food. This is about maintaining the spiritual relationships that allow human communities to exist in harmony with the vast intelligence of the rainforest. The hunters wait in darkness, consciousness expanded by sacred plants, hearts open to receive messages from animal spirits who appear in visions to offer themselves for the community's survival. These encounters require the deepest form of respect, the most sincere gratitude, and the willingness to accept that human needs must always be balanced with the needs of the larger web of life. Imagine the profound intimacy of these pre-dawn vigils, where individual consciousness merges with the collective dreaming of the forest itself, where the boundaries between hunter and hunted dissolve into a dance of mutual service and sacred reciprocity. The Auarah practice reveals something essential about sustainable living, that taking from nature requires first giving to nature, offering prayers, gratitude, and the commitment to use only what is needed while protecting what is sacred. Their dream-guided hunting represents not primitive superstition, but sophisticated ecological practice that ensures abundance for both human and non-human communities. The Maya, Guatemala and beyond. In the highlands of Guatemala, where ancient temples still whisper secrets to those who know how to listen, and indigenous communities maintain traditions that stretch back thousands of years, Maya dreamers continue to serve their people as bridges between the world of ordinary reality and the realm of spiritual guidance. The Maya understanding of dreams encompasses both individual healing and community prophecy, where trained dream specialists receive visions that inform everything from agricultural decisions to conflict resolution, from healing practices to ceremonial timing that maintains harmony with cosmic cycles. These dream specialists, often women who inherit their gifts through family lineages, undergo years of training to develop the sensitivity necessary to distinguish between personal dreams and prophetic visions meant for the entire community. They learn to interpret symbolic languages that communicate across the boundary between human consciousness and the intelligence of natural forces. In morning gatherings that echo the ancient assemblies described in sacred texts, Maya communities continue the practice of dream sharing, where individual visions become collective wisdom, where the sleeping insights of many combine to guide the waking decisions of all. The Maya tradition reminds us that prophecy is not about predicting the future, but about maintaining the proper relationship between human consciousness and the larger patterns that govern life on Earth. The cycles of seasons, the rhythms of celestial bodies, the deeper currents of spiritual energy that flow through all existence. The Igbo, southeastern Nigeria. In the villages of southeastern Nigeria, where the rhythm of daily life flows with the ancient patterns of African wisdom, and every symbol carries layers of meaning that connect the human soul to spiritual guidance. The Igbo people understand dreams as messages from ancestors, warnings from guardians, and invitations to deeper understanding of life's sacred mysteries. Here, beneath the canopy of ancient Iroko trees, and within compounds where generations have gathered to decode the night's visions, dream interpretation represents far more than individual psychological exploration. It serves as the very foundation of communal wisdom and spiritual navigation. Igbo dream interpretation operates through a sophisticated symbolic language, where crocodiles represent water spirits offering protection and power, where birds bring messages from ancestors, where the appearance of certain colors, numbers, or natural phenomena in dreams provides specific guidance for navigating life's challenges and opportunities. The elderly dream interpreters, known as Ndi Nkuzi Nro, teachers of dreams, carry within their memories vast libraries of symbolic meanings passed down through countless generations. The significance of palm wine flowing in dreams, abundance approaching, the meaning of yam harvests appearing in sleep visions, ancestral blessings for fertility and prosperity, the interpretation of masquerade figures dancing through dreamscapes calls for ceremony and spiritual attention. Each symbol operates within multiple layers of meaning, shifting its significance based on the dreamer's age, gender, social position, and current life circumstances. A snake appearing to a pregnant woman carries vastly different implications than the same serpent visiting a young man preparing for marriage, or an elder contemplating transition to ancestorhood. The dream interpreters understand these nuances with the precision of master craftsmen, their interpretations taking into account not merely the symbol itself, but the entire web of relationships, obligations, and spiritual connections that define the dreamer's place within the cosmic order. Village councils include dream interpretation as an essential element of community decision-making, where the symbolic visions of individuals are discussed collectively, their meanings decoded through traditional wisdom that has been tested and refined over generations of practical application. When disputes arise over land boundaries, when illness strikes without apparent cause, when unusual weather patterns threaten crops, or when important decisions about marriage alliances or trade relationships must be made, the community gathers to examine the dreams that have emerged from their collective unconscious, understanding that individual sleep visions often carry guidance for the entire community's well-being. The process of communal dream interpretation follows sacred protocols. The dreamer speaks without interruption, while elders listen with the focused attention of master artisans examining precious materials, noting not only the content of the vision, but the emotional resonance, the quality of light within the dream, the presence or absence of familiar ancestors, and the overall spiritual atmosphere that permeated the sleep experience. Questions emerge organically from this careful listening, not interrogation, but gentle inquiry that helps reveal layers of meaning that might otherwise remain hidden even from the dreamer themselves. The Igbo approach to dreams reveals something profound about the relationship between individual psychology and collective wisdom, that the symbols appearing in personal dreams often carry messages not just for the dreamer, but for the entire community, warnings about approaching difficulties, guidance about timing for important decisions, insights about maintaining harmony between human needs and spiritual requirements. This understanding reflects a worldview where individual consciousness is never truly separate from communal consciousness, where personal dreams become threads in the larger tapestry of collective spiritual guidance that protects and guides the community through the complexities of existence. In Igbo understanding, dreams serve as a continuous dialogue between the visible world of daily experience and the invisible world of spiritual forces that shape and guide human destiny. This dialogue requires constant attention, careful interpretation, and respectful response, for to ignore the messages of dreams is to sever the vital connection between human consciousness and the wisdom of ancestors who continue to guide their descendants through the medium of sacred sleep visions. Chinese Temple. Historic China. In ancient China, where temples functioned not just as places of worship, but as hospitals for the soul and universities for spiritual development, the practice of dream incubation transformed sacred architecture into healing technology, where the act of sleeping in sanctified spaces became a precise method for receiving divine guidance. These temples, built according to principles of feng shui that channeled beneficial qi through carefully arranged courtyards, positioned at the intersection of dragon lines that carried the earth's vital energy, and consecrated through ceremonies that invited the presence of compassionate deities, represented the pinnacle of spiritual engineering environments designed specifically to facilitate communion between human consciousness and divine wisdom. Pilgrims would journey for weeks to reach temples renowned for their dream-inducing properties, bringing specific questions about illness, relationships, business decisions, or spiritual development that required wisdom beyond ordinary human understanding. The journey itself formed an essential part of the process, walking along ancient paths that connected sacred sites, camping beneath stars that had witnessed countless generations of seekers, participating in preparatory rituals at smaller shrines along the way, and gradually shifting consciousness from the concerns of mundane existence to the receptivity required for divine communication. The most famous dream incubation temples, such as the Temple of the Medicine Buddha at Mount Jiuhua, or the sacred complex dedicated to Guanyin at Putuo Mountain, became renowned not merely for their architectural beauty, but for the consistency and clarity of the guidance received within their walls. Pilgrims would arrive bearing offerings carefully chosen for their spiritual significance. Incense made from rare sandalwood that had been blessed by accomplished masters, fruit grown in soil consecrated by centuries of prayer, handwritten copies of sacred texts that carried the spiritual imprint of devoted scholars. The temple environment, with its specific architectural proportions based on sacred geometric principles, carefully chosen location at the convergence of beneficial energy lines, sacred art created by masters who understood the relationship between visual imagery and consciousness transformation, and consecrated atmosphere maintained through continuous ceremony and meditation, created conditions that facilitated profound dream experiences that transcended ordinary psychological processes. The practice required careful preparation that could extend for days or even weeks, purification rituals that cleansed not only the physical body, but the emotional and mental patterns that might interfere with divine communication, fasting that heightened sensitivity to subtle spiritual influences, meditation practices that trained consciousness to maintain awareness during sleep states, and the setting of clear intentions that focused the entire being on receiving specific guidance about the questions that had motivated the pilgrimage. Pilgrims would sleep in designated areas surrounded by images of deities painted by master artists who understood how visual representations could serve as doorways for divine presence, burning incense that induced altered states of consciousness while maintaining mental clarity, and sacred objects that served as conduits for divine communication prayer wheels that continued spinning through the night, crystals that amplified spiritual energy, and ritual implements that had been consecrated through years of ceremonial use. The sleeping areas themselves were designed according to principles that maximize spiritual receptivity, positioned to align with beneficial compass directions, elevated to specific heights that corresponded to spiritual principles, surrounded by sounds that induced meditative states, flowing water, wind chimes tuned to harmonious frequencies, the distant chanting of monks maintaining all-night vigils, and arranged to create geometric patterns that channeled spiritual energy toward the sleeping pilgrims. The resulting dreams were not simply random subconscious activity, but structured spiritual experiences where deities appeared with specific messages delivered through symbolic language that transcended ordinary communication, where complex guidance was revealed through visual narratives that could require days or weeks of contemplation to fully understand, and where healing energies were transmitted directly through dream contact with enlightened beings who operated beyond the limitations of ordinary physical existence. Temple specialists, trained through decades of study in both Buddhist philosophy and practical dream interpretation, served as guides for understanding these profound experiences. These masters possessed deep knowledge of symbolic language, extensive familiarity with the particular qualities and methods of different deities, and practical wisdom about how divine guidance could be applied to the complex challenges of human existence. This practice demonstrates something remarkable about the relationship between sacred space and consciousness, that properly prepared environments can facilitate experiences that transcend ordinary limitations of individual awareness, connecting human consciousness to sources of wisdom that exceed personal knowledge and understanding, and providing access to guidance that can transform not only individual lives, but entire communities that benefit from the wisdom received through these sacred dream experiences. Aboriginal Dreamtime, Australia. At the foundation of all these traditions lies perhaps the most profound understanding of dream reality ever developed by human consciousness. The Aboriginal Australian concept of dreamtime, where past, present, and future converge in an eternal now that underlies all existence, where the ancestors who created the world continue their work through the dreams of the living. Dreamtime is not simply a creation story from the distant past, but a continuous present where the ancestor spirits who shaped the landscape, established the laws of nature, and taught the first people how to live in harmony with the earth, continue to be active, accessible through dreams, ceremony, and direct communion with the land itself. Every rock formation, water source, and animal species carries within it the story of ancestor beings who traveled the continent during the creative epoch, their journeys becoming the foundation of Aboriginal law, their resting places becoming sacred sites where their power can still be accessed through proper ceremony and dream practice. Aboriginal people understand themselves not as separate individuals, but as temporary manifestations of eternal ancestor spirits, connected through bloodlines and soul bonds to the creative forces that continue to shape reality through the medium of human consciousness, properly attuned to the dreamtime frequency. This is not primitive mythology, but sophisticated spiritual technology that maintains the connection between human consciousness and the creative intelligence of the universe itself. A practice that keeps the world alive, the ancestors present, and the future open to continuous creation through the medium of sacred dreaming. As we leave these hidden worlds behind, one truth remains. We've forgotten how to speak the ancient language of dreams. In our modern lives, sleep is seen as downtime. Dreams are dismissed as noise. But the cultures we've explored tonight show us otherwise. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, remember, your dreams are not distractions. They're invitations into deeper truths, into forgotten worlds, into the mystery of who you really are.